Mindset and Mastery podcast. I'm your host, Jim, and joining me today, as always, is my co host, Ryan Janot. Ryan, how are things today?
Good. I was doing my homework today, and it seems like we have so many different ideas of podcasts already lined up that the two of us were like, "Which one are we going to do today?" So, this is the one that I felt most prepared for, as far as like how we prepare for our podcast and what people are saying, and I guess the important issues that are happening right now in the moment when it comes to our clients. So, and what I'll say about this episode too, Jim, you and I definitely aligned a lot about this when I decided to make the move from one
Mm.
organization to joining TVH, and this kind of salesman that we often get when it comes to insurance salesmen and investment salespeople, and just not the right feel. And I think that's one of the biggest things when it comes to finding a right fit for you and a person that you're going to. And as we go through this, I'm sure I'll have lots of other thoughts and feelings about it. But it is ultimately who has your best interest at heart. And I know a lot of advisors do have a bad rep, or have, especially in the past. But as we move forward, I think I want to challenge people to whether they have the right advisor for who's helping them and their family or their small business or business reach their goals. So, with that being said,
Well, I think people are under suspense because you dove right into it without telling people what we're actually talking about, right? So, in terms of
exactly.
the title of this episode is Financial Guardians versus Salesmen or Salespeople, who's steering your financial ship? And really, what we're here to do is try to identify how you can identify a true financial professional versus just strictly a salesperson trying to sell you a product. And this has been a debate for many years. And I will warn people, I'm going to be basing a lot of this just on experience because I was studying another episode that I thought we were recording today. So a lot of this will just be based on my experience, my 35 plus years experience in the industry, and both working at the banks and as an advisor as well. So let's talk a little bit about Ryan, the financial landscape, and maybe discuss like all the different roles in the financial industry. Right, there's so many of them, and I can say that when I started in the industry years ago, what we were taught was try to be everything to all people. So one person doing it all, which I'm sure you can appreciate, really didn't work so well. So let's
Mhm.
go through maybe some of the different titles and different financial professionals that people can work with in the financial industry.
Yeah. Again, within the financial industry, there's obviously the insurance agent, the door to door salesman that people all know from the 1950s and 60s and 70s, going door to door, and what your parents or grandparents perhaps may have told of you of what they felt of those people coming into the home, and whether they were simply trying to protect your family, which was a small part, but often that is tied to them achieving a bigger goal. Uh, Financial industry, there's lawyers involved within it, right? Really trying to make sure that you're protecting yourself, reading the fine print, and that's again one of those things when it comes to the TVH group as a whole, being able to cover all areas. Again, there's the banking side. Uh, I'm sure we'll have lots to say about banks and whether they have our best interests in mind. Um, and there's different types of titles when it comes to the financial planner, advisor, wealth advisor, things like that. And what do all of those mean is very important for people to understand. Uh, Ultimately, you kind of touched upon it, is that you can't be all things to to a person, and this is something that I think coming into the industry was kind of driven very hard, is like you got to know everything. People are going to ask all these questions, but you cannot. There's
You
so
can
much
try.
going.
You can try. It's just not going to be effective, right?
Well, and many advisors, I'm going to say in my personal experience, many advisors that have been in the industry over, I'm going to say 15 years, especially, really drove that home of being everything to to the person that they were working with, their clients. But what I've realized is that you can't be, and that there's so much, and you really need, and we'll touch upon this. You really do need to bring other professionals in. So this is kind of my first challenge to the financial landscape as a whole: is if your advisor is answering all your questions for everything, they're likely missing something. And one of the great things about working with TVH Group is that we can pull upon different specialists to bring in and actually find the right answer for the question that you have. And again, we have years of experience amongst all the financial team, all the team at the mortgages and legal and accounting. They're spanning over different areas, and they're bringing in different kind of pieces to this puzzle. So I would say that that's the biggest thing as far as the financial landscape, and making sure that you're challenging your advisor of where they're getting the information, and that they're not just simply saying, I've done this for 35 years. Sorry, Jim, but I've done this for 35 years and I know everything, which is not true. And that's the great thing with you, Jim, is like, you don't know, and that's why you bring in other teamed people that are going to be experts in it. So anyway.
There is so much to unpack there. If we talk about kind of like TVH Group and the team, you will meet other advisors in the industry, and they may say to you, well, I have an accountant on my team. I'm part of a team, and we have a wealth manager, and we have a mortgage broker, and so on and so forth. But the question is, are they really part of the team, or are they just a referral partner? Meaning, are they someone who has their own business outside practice? They work with, a bunch of different advisors, and you're one of the advisors that refers to them? Or is it truly a team like TVH Group, where we are all in house under one roof? We share the client information once they provide us the authorization to do so, and we all work with each other. So, for example, if I have an accounting referral, it only goes to David. It doesn't go to anybody else. I don't have any other referral arrangements with other accountants. Now, there might be other outside tax specialists that David will work with side by side, right? Because
Mhm.
he has his area of expertise, and other lawyer or accountants will have theirs. But even on the mortgage side, we do not refer to anyone outside of TVH Group. It is John and his team. That's who we work with, right? So when you do work with an advisor, if they say to you, I'm part of a team of professionals, really find out if they are actually part of a team, meaning in-house that they've are part of, or do they just have outside referral agreements? And the reason why that's important, the difference between the two, is if you're dealing with an accountant who's working with their own clients, plus they're receiving referrals from many different advisors, I'm not sure you're really getting the that full service from that individual, because they're going to put their own clients ahead of yours if they need to, right? Where whenever a client comes into TVH Group, you are a client of TVH Group, regardless on if you're being referred to one, two, three, or four of the partners, right? So I think that's one of the biggest differences. What I'll say, Ryan, is if I kind of go back to the 35 years that I've been doing this, when I first started in banking, as an example, the banking model evolved from when I first started. So originally, when I was in banking, the model was a service model. Tellers were there to process transactions, and it was all about customer service. It was the customer service is already right. We have the best service. Like, that's really what the business model was like. And near the end of my career at the bank, it started to evolve into a sales model. It wasn't so much about providing the best service anymore. It was about selling products. That's so as a teller, again, my originally was to be the best teller and give the best service to the client. That eventually shifted to, you now have targets, you have sales targets, and you have to meet those targets. And my understanding is that's still in place today. So when you're sitting with a teller or even calling the call center, and I've worked at a banking call center as well, Their job is to cross sell. That's the big word is cross sell, cross sell, cross sell. And there are articles out there right now as we speak that speak to the practices of the bank and how when they sell you a product, it might not actually be in your best interest. And that's not the reason why it's being offered to you. It's in many cases because that's what the staff have been told from the people above them that they have to sell, right? And what I'll say as well is in the insurance business, when I left banking and entered the insurance industry, back then you talked about the sales agent, the insurance sales agent. That's really what we had,
Mhm.
right? So I, for example, represented a single company. I was an agent of a single company. And I remember many times when I would go see a new client, and this is what we were taught, in the sales, is try to be the last one in, not the first one in, because typically how people would buy insurance in those days was they would meet up with three, four, five different agents from five different companies to do all the different comparisons, right? And if you were the first one in, chances are you weren't going to get the business because by the time they get to the third or fourth or even fifth agent, clients are just exhausted,
Mhm.
right? And there were a lot of similarities between the products, so they'd finally just go with the last one or the one that was closest to the last. And the industry has evolved, right? Now we are brokers. There aren't too many career agents out there, so it definitely has moved from a sales, or it has evolved into a sales model.
Mhm.
And from there, really what we're trying to do is separate ourselves from, are we just selling financial products or are we consulting? Are we advising? Are we building a long term relationship with our clients? And the way to do that is to, again, be part of a true financial team, which is something that we have with professionals to back it up,
Mhm.
right? So a lot to unpack there. I probably went a little bit longer than I normally should, but clients will get confused with the role of an individual. Like, what's a financial advisor? What's an insurance advisor? What's a CFP? What is a PFP? Like, there's all these different terminologies, right? It gets very confusing at times.
Mhm.
So the bottom line is, you want to work with someone who's not there to service their own needs, financial needs, commissions.
Mhm.
You want to work with someone who's looking to basically, they're putting you first. You are ultimately the first one. Every recommendation is in your best interest as the client, and it's not in the best interest of the individual.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I hate to say it in our industry, there are too many people too many agents, advisors who put their own interests ahead of the clients. I'd say it's a small percentage, relatively speaking, but they're out there, and they're the ones that we read about and see in the media,
Mhm.
right? Anything else you want to add to that?
It's an uphill battle for those that are actually trying to do great work and really serve
Yeah,
customers and help them with their plan and help them with their family and their goals and paying off mortgages, taking trips, things like that. So, and
yeah,
really just making sure we're supporting them. So,
yeah. Now, what would you say are the characteristics of a true financial professional, aside from experience and having their different designations? Because I think that's a given, right?
yeah, true financial professional again is going to ask the right questions and make sure that they're helping you reveal the things that are most important to you. That for me is being able to connect with a client and understand what their true goals are and what their family's goals are, what their values are. Like for me, that's a true financial professional that can really do some work to help move people forward towards their goal. um, Somebody that you can have, like, again, we do the coaching piece. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and this is the kind of the teaching piece of being able to coach people, because your success is my success, and that's
Mm,
it's like being a dad, right? Knowing that you're raising your kid for success. And each and every day, my son will ask me from time to time, like, what do I enjoy most about my job? Is like having those wins with clients that were unable to achieve a goal before. But when working with me, they're able to achieve that goal faster, or for that matter, understand what it is that they were potentially doing wrong along the way, whether it's old school thinking, teaching that our education systems taught us for years. But I think that's, I guess, a secondary part of a professional for me is that that advising coaching piece of that you feel like you're walking away, like you've added value to that client, and that client's taken something away as a learning piece. So anyway, that's
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is teaching, right? It's I always say to our clients, we do this in partnership.
mhm,
It isn't so much a they come to me, tell me what they want, and I make the recommendation, and they just agree and sign off on it. There's an educational component to it. I want them to understand not only the why, but the reasons behind the recommendations.
mhm,
And I don't expect them to necessarily understand that at your level or my level, because this is what we do day in and day out, right? But to have an understanding is very important. And again, to teach them and ask lots of questions. It's amazing how sometimes we'll have people say, I have a stupid question. None of them are stupid, right? They're all very legit questions, and we're more than happy to answer those questions, right?
mhm,
So there definitely is a teaching component. For me, I always look at I'd say empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. I think we're starting to lack some of that right now. I don't know if that's a social media thing or whatever it is, but a lot of times when I make a recommendation, I will ask myself, if this was my mother, if
mhm,
this was my sister, my brother, a sibling, my best friend, would I make this recommendation for them?
mhm,
Right? Because that's very important. And it's not to say that every recommendation is right for my family, but the bottom line is that I need to feel good that I understand I make the recommendation that is best again for the client
mhm,
and not for me as the advisor,
yeah,
right? So I think it's very important. Now, I think one of the challenges that people have in working with different advisors, professionals that do not communicate or coordinate on behalf of the client is a lot of decisions are made without really having a full holistic understanding of the person's plan,
mhm,
right? And I think that's one of the challenges that people face. I think it's a challenge when they walk into a bank branch. There might be an advisor. The advisor might put together some form of retirement plan, but they're not talking about insurance. You might talk to a wealth manager. They're not talking to you about insurance. They're talking to you about investing, right?
mhm,
You might come across an insurance advisor. They're not necessarily going to talk to you about investing because they want to place all your funds into an insurance type of product. And I think that's really where TVH Group, the foundation of TVH Group, and how it was founded was when John and I first partnered up. He being the real estate guru, and me being the advisor. And all of my recommendations were naturally going to insurance and investments, where John's recommendations were all real estate recommendations. And that's where we recognize that by joining forces, whenever a client would come to us and looking for direction, I had my natural biases, John had his, but those biases have been removed because now we're asking the client, what is it that you would like to achieve? Because we can offer it all,
mhm,
right? If it's real estate, great, we have that option. If it's a good old fashioned portfolio solution, great, we have that option. If it's a combination of those investments, great, we have that in house, right? And I think that's lacking in the industry right now.
yeah, absolutely. It's just it's understanding what a client's true best interests are,
Yeah,
and we get clients too that have no idea what their actual goal is at the
yeah,
time when they meet with us, right? And it's about asking questions to uncover what it is that is most important to them and their and what matches to their values. That way they're making the right decision. And again,
yeah,
every every social media outlet that we've, not every, a lot of them out there are, this is the one way to do this and this is how you have to achieve it, where that's just not true.
Yeah.
There's so many different scenarios, and again, that's going back to the true financial professional piece, which is there's so many scenarios and everything is fluid.
Mhm.
We can focus on a goal until things hit the fan, right? And that's where we
Yeah.
come into play also at the same time, is having a backup plan to the backup plan, right?
Yeah.
And making sure that the plan doesn't completely fall apart if something drastic happens or something big and beautiful happens at the same time, right? So we can still
Yeah.
stay on course. So
Yeah. I mean, what I'll say is I feel fortunate that when you and I and Denis attend an industry event, that we're fortunate that we're shoulder to shoulder with some high end, great quality advisors. But it amazes me how many times we are introduced to a client who will say, yeah, I have a bunch of RSPs and I've worked with my advisor for 15 years. And I would ask, do you have a retirement plan? And they're thinking I'm asking, do they have an RRSP?
mhm,
And their answer is like, absolutely, I have a plan, a retirement plan. I'm like, no, no, I'm not referring to the registered account. Did your advisor actually sit down and make projections with you to determine if you're going to meet your retirement goals?
mhm,
Well, no, that's never happened,
no,
right? And that amazes me that even till this day that that's not happening. So if you are working with an advisor and they haven't provided that service to you, I think you should question that and ask for them to walk you through that process because it's really important
mhm,
to have an understanding if what you're doing is actually going to meet the goals that you've set out for yourself, which
mhm,
is I want to retire and not worry about it,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Bottom line.
yeah,
The other thing I'll say too about our industry, which I find interesting at this point, is now when Ryan, you and I go to industry events, what do we hear the successful advisors say? Well, I am part of a team. So if you want to be a successful advisor, you should be part of a team.
mhm,
We've been doing that since 2008. We are a family office that have offered those services since then. But now the industry is suggesting advisors should be part of a team.
mhm.
What's the other thing that we keep hearing about now?
Tech,
Integrate technology.
technology. Yep.
CRM, you should have a CRM and you should incorporate AI tools. We've been running off a CRM since 2010, right? We've been doing that since then. We have a lot of data on our client, a lot of information. And once AI was introduced and available in the industry, right away we've signed up to those tools, right? It definitely helps keep providing us efficiencies.
Mhm,
And it helps with our retirement planning and the things that we're trying to do for our clients as well, right?
mhm.
But it just amazes me how many like I'll come across an advisor, a successful advisor, and they're still running off of Excel spreadsheets and paper
Paper.
notes from a notepad, right? That I mean, that was I think the first thing that I said to you was stop using paper,
Yeah.
right? Write it down on an iPad somewhere so you have a permanent electronic copy of what you're jotting down. Because I'll guarantee you that at some point you'll be like, I remember I wrote something down at whatever event or with a client, and you're scanning through all your notes, and maybe that you just can't find it, right?
Yeah.
But having electronically, it's just so much easier to find. So these are just some efficiencies, right? In
Mhm,
working with a team who uses the technology.
yep.
But I think really what we want to lead to next, Ryan, and I think you mentioned this right off the start, is so we have all these different professionals, but who is your financial coordinator?
Yeah.
Who's the one that's actually going to bring it together? So, for example, if you want a house built, you're going to need an architect, and you're going to need the electrician, and the bricklayer and the person laying the foundation and the plumber and the roofer and the finishers and all those different expertise.
Yep.
But if you as the client went to an architect and said, hey, here's the house that I want built, design it for me, put it on a plan, and then they give you the plan. You can't just give that to all these individuals and expect them to complete the project, to build the house for you. You need someone to coordinate that, which is a general contractor.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the piece that people are missing right now is that individual, that financial coordinator. So do you want to maybe talk a little bit more about what a financial coordinator is and the importance of not having one and having one?
Yeah, and again, that comes down to what I was saying before, which was, you can't be an expert in everything, right? And you need to bring in experts, retirement experts, tax experts. You need to bring in mortgage specialists and lawyers and wills and estates, wealth and portfolio managers and accounting and bookkeeping. All of those things need to be coordinated. Again, for some listeners, we are the wedding planners essentially. So whether it's
Yeah,
quarterback or coordinator, we're the ones making sure that we're able to connect everybody and that everybody kind of stays on the blueprinted plan that we've drawn out for you. And
yeah.
again, you know, everything's fluid. Everything can change in an instant. Whether it's
Well, it does.
yeah,
It just does, right? I know John. A lot of times he'll sit down with a young couple, and as an example, he'll ask about their plans, and because they come in saying, "Well, mom and dad told me I should get a 5 year fixed, on my mortgage,"
oh,
and John's like, "Do you plan on having a family? Do you plan on starting a family over the next couple of years? Do you plan on changing your job? Will you have to move potentially, right?" And sometimes it's difficult for people to kind of project out what's going to happen over a 5 year period. And he'll ask them, has a lot changed for you over the last 5 years?
yeah,
Well, yeah, I graduated university, and hey, we met and we dated for a couple of years, and then we got engaged, and now we're married, and now we're buying a house. It's exactly right. So let's make sure that we structure your mortgage in such a way that if there are these potential changes over the next 5 years, that we can adapt, right? And it's
yeah,
no different with our planning,
yeah,
right? Is let's make sure that we can adapt with the changes that will happen, not
yeah.
if, they will happen,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
When they happen, and we can run those scenarios using the software that we use for that
Yeah,
planning, right? And
yeah,
making sure that things are triggered at the right time, especially when people go into retirement or if you're saving for a house.
mhm,
What does that look like? And for us, everybody has a different stage of their life, and
yeah,
for us to use our experience and our network to say, okay, we have a client at this stage in their life of accumulating wealth or deaccumulating wealth. What does that look like? And again, those are things that a lot of advisors and especially banking institutions do
mm,
not do at all. Is that deaccumulation of what does your retirement actually look like,
no,
other than I have a nest egg that I've been putting money into, but I don't know what happens when I decide to not go to work anymore, right?
yeah,
So that planning, you know, I'm seeing it less and less. It's only because we're talking about it. Is when I first started the industry, people coming to me 30 days to 6 months away from retirement or a major goal,
yeah,
and it's woohoo, what's going on, what do I need to do? And now as we're talking through people's plans and they're sharing that with the experience that they've had working with tvh group, tvh financial,
mm,
is I'm seeing that number, at least for myself, starting to move backwards.
yeah,
We're having younger people come and start their plans earlier than ever
yeah,
before.
yeah,
you know I'd say 45 to 50 is probably when I would see most people. And now I'm seeing 22 to 28 coming and starting to want to start a plan, and people,
yeah,
uh, for me to be able to coordinate with them, 5 years out from retirement instead
yeah,
of that. Here's a 30-day notice. I'm retiring in 30 days. Make magic happen for me.
yeah,
What does the outlook look like?
yeah,
And I know my dad always jokes about, oh, was it? I can work, I've worked for the last 50 years, but uh, in retirement I'll have to start working again after 30 days. So
yeah,
because they haven't planned it out correctly, right? So
yeah. Well, the other group that I'm noticing that we're seeing a lot more now approaching us is the millennial group, right? Typically like 35 to 40.
Yeah.
And they've done a good job of accumulating some assets. But you and I have been in meetings with some of them, and I'll be very blunt, like, why are you now seeking to work with an advisor
Yeah.
like ourselves? And the response, not just once, but every single time, is up until this point, I thought I can do it all myself. Now I recognize I need advice, and I'm not getting that from the robo advisors,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not getting that from the bank either, right? That's what they're coming to us with now. Is they finally recognize that our um, our taxation, our financial system, very complicated. There's so many different variables, right?
Hmm.
And it's again, it's amazing how when we point out things like why you should name your 10-year-old as a beneficiary on your RSP when you have a spouse, right? Or the fact that they'll name a beneficiary again on a younger child, or they'll name the wrong beneficiary on a certain account, and the tax implicate, like, it's just, it's a, they don't get that advice from anyone,
Yeah.
right? So we are starting to see more of the millennial generation now approaching us, recognizing they absolutely need advice,
Yeah.
right? Or they've played the crypto game, putting all their money in the crypto basket, and tired of dealing with that roller coaster ride, right? Because
Mhm.
it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for people. Now I'm meeting up with clients who invested in marijuana stocks when it was so popular, and I would always say, like, do not put all your money into marijuana. Do not put anything that you can't afford to lose. And people coming back saying, you know what, I actually put a lot of my money in marijuana and it's all gone,
Mhm.
right? So they're recognizing the value of the advice, and I think that's what people don't recognize, because I know on TV they talk about fees and paying the extra fees and what do you get for it and whatever else. It's the advice. It's protecting people from these events. It's hard for you and I, Ryan, when the markets are doing well and monkeys could make 15-20% in a given year, right? It's difficult. I'll be honest with you on that. But when the markets are horrible and volatile, that's where we are now, our expertise is coming in. That's where we're guiding people to make sure that they don't make the wrong decisions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And part of the way that we help people now is, by having the financial coordinator, like we've talked about, you have to write it down. You have to have something in paper. We don't use paper, so online, right? But really, is you have to kind of set out that plan for yourself, and also see if you're meeting your goals year over year, and if you have to make those adjustments. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about creating or developing a comprehensive financial strategy and why that's important for people.
Yeah. It's an important part is creating that financial strategy and making sure that it is written out. Lots of great sayings about having things written down and how you can achieve them if they're written out. So, and as we work alongside clients and plugging in some of the important, you know, key factors that happen throughout somebody's career, um, and making sure that any things that go up or down. Again, you touched upon it when it comes to the robo advisors.
Mm,
We won't mention their names right now, but obviously they're out there. Is that, yeah, people are coming back to us because there is no strategy in place, for when the market goes to crap, and
mhm,
the market will go to crap, and the market will rebound and do amazing, and everybody will be dancing in the streets. That's the way
mm,
I picture it, at least. So,
yeah.
um, but making sure that every piece of that puzzle, when it comes to creating that strategy, that there's an order, that there's a priority being set for certain things, whether it's creating an emergency fund, whether it's making sure you're on the right path for your RSPs, that you're not sacrificing RSPs or your future for maybe your kids' current RESPs, and how that becomes a fine balance between the two of them, and that everybody is creating this and developing strategy differently. So the cookie cutter that the robo advisors are currently creating, and that banks and institutions are forcing people into this, is I guess, really becoming part of our day to day right now, as far as my conversations with clients, which is I tried it and now I'm realizing it's put me behind, and it's because I diversified, and for those listening, I'm doing air quotes right now. I diversified my portfolio in a way that made sure that the market didn't hit me hard, um, but they truly weren't, because the robo or the bank advisor had just simply said, "This is how you diversify," and we have different strategies. What that means for people based on their goals, what they expect, and again, based on our experience of what we've seen with other people, kind of similar stories, whether you're a single parent, a family, a small business, a large business, whatever it is, that you can't follow the cookie cutter that is being put out there right now, and that's the comprehensive side, which is regular reviews. I say this numerous times on our podcast and with clients, having us part of your top 5 list when something changes within your strategy, whether it's an increase or decrease of funds within your investment portfolio, having a conversation with your advisor to say, hey, some things have changed.
Mhm.
Oh, we got a dog and a baby, and now I'm looking at getting a soccer car, a soccer dad car, or hockey
Yeah.
van, whatever they're called now. So, um, and how by having great leadership and great advice, that can really walk you through your plan, not what your parents' plan was of how
Mhm.
they achieved it, but your plan, and not your friends or neighbors' plan. Your plan, your family plan, and that how that is very different. And the experience really shows in the amount of people that are introducing us to more people to develop their own individual strategy to
Yeah.
tackle whatever's going on in the world. So
Yeah, and we're not going to bore you with like a 50-page report. First of all, again, because we don't use paper, so you're not going to ever get that. Now, if you wanted in PDF, you could, but we provide an online access portal to for our clients. So we collect the data, we present the plan, we make a recommendation, and then it's all centralized into a retirement plan program, so you can see where you're at in terms of your progress or what you need to do, your projections. And
mhm,
anytime you can log in. Now, if you're looking for updated numbers, then you just let us know. We update the numbers, and then we can see again. Okay, well, where are we at? What I really like is actually our snapshot feature.
mhm,
That's really been helpful with working with our clients, because a lot of times what they want to know is, where was I at the last time we met, and where am I at today?
yeah,
And we can literally go through the snapshot feature and say, well, last time we met, here's what your accounts were valued at. Here's what they're valued at today. And how does that relate to your actual progress report? Are
right,
you on track for retirement, or if it's a purchase of a home, or whatever the goal might be? But it is something that we do provide our clients. So 24/7, you have access to it. And then finally, what I also like about the program that we offer is we can turn on what's called client mode. So we can create your base plan, which is the one we're going to be working off of. But with you as a client, if you want to go in and work on your own what if scenarios, you can.
yeah,
And if you see a better scenario that is better than what we've originally set out, you let us know. And then we create that as your default scenario,
yeah,
right? But it's very important to have access to that information. I know we kind of poo poo the robo advisors. They have their place in the industry. Some clients believe that their diversification is by opening accounts with different robo advisors. Which was funny about that is, if you compare their portfolios, they're all pretty much in the same ETF investments, right? So they're really not diversified. They're just diversified by name only, not
mhm,
necessarily by the assets. I think a lot of people who approach us, many are a little concerned about minimums and us not really wanting to take them on as clients. And what I'll say is, we will work with you if we believe that there's a strong long term relationship. So if it's $50,000, if it's $1 million, we have an option available, because we have our own in-house portfolio solution and there are minimums there. But we do have relationships with other portfolio managers as well, where they can assist you. But really, what that is again, that's the plumber, that's the electrician, that's the roofer. We're the ones that are going to coordinate the actual construction of your dream home.
Mhm.
That's our job. That's really what Ryan's role is. That's what my role is in working with clients,
Mm.
right? I think the other thing I want to point out and stress for people where the benefit is of having um, a financial coordinator is, again, one of the things that I hear a lot from our clients is they like working with us and our team because when we make a recommendation, for example, you and I are helping a client out with some recommendation, but we also know that they're working on a potential mortgage with John or refinance.
Mhm.
So we can ask him, here's what we're recommending. Would that potentially impact them qualifying for a mortgage or a refinance?
Yeah.
And if they're working with David, here's what we're recommending. Are there any tax liabilities we haven't thought of that we need to be aware of? Or it could be speaking with Sonia. Many times Sonia will help clients with their wills and power of attorneys, and she'll come to you and I and say, "Hey, I'm drafting their wills right now. What assets do they have
Mhm.
that I need to be aware of, and how are they structured in terms of the beneficiary and all that?" So I make sure that I set it up properly in their will.
Mhm.
And do we have to concern ourselves with establishing trust and all these things? We're doing that on behalf of the client. When you're dealing with three or four outside professionals and no one's quarterbacking that situation, one's going to make a recommendation based on their piece without really understanding if it's going to impact some of the other decisions that you're going to make.
Yeah.
And that's where we save people a lot of money and
Yeah.
frustration,
Uh,
right?
yeah. And it becomes essentially the ideal scenario for clients that work with us, right? Is there's flow, and it's they're involved in the process. We're taking care of things along the back end to make sure all the communication's happening. Welcome into our world any day, what's going on in the background. And you know, in the past 3 to 4 months, I've had a lot of clients that, you know, upon somebody's passing, or um, you know, somebody needs to issue a power attorney, whatever it is, and they've been waiting. I had one
Mhm.
client tell me 4 months for
Really?
simply to get paperwork, to get information in
Yeah.
place. And I can say almost this. I want to say this with guarantee. There's not going to be a 4 month waiting period, and nobody calling you back,
No.
um, or somebody going on vacation and and not getting back to you, or somebody moving on to a different department.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about our you know CRM and our communicating with each other. We have weekly communications where we review files that we're
Yeah.
going through, and that we're making sure that we're always making the right decision for the client
Yeah.
along the way. And that's, one of the great things of us having those weekly meetings too, is
Yeah.
are there any missing pieces? We want to make sure we're not dropping the ball on anything, that our clients
Yeah.
are being supported in every way. And that in itself, again, when it comes to people talking about robo advisors working with institutions,
Yeah.
um, I haven't had a single person complain about what it's like working with us, besides the fact that we can find answers,
Yeah.
right? And coordinate with all the team members and get answers within a reasonable time,
Yeah.
and at the same time communicate back, because that's what clients often want from us is,
Yeah.
I just want communication. I
Yeah.
ask a question, and suddenly 5 weeks goes by, and what happened? What
Yeah.
happened to my plan, right? And that's what often happens with other institutions or other options that people have had and are now coming to us. So
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Well, you know what? In concluding our meeting today, I think again, I will stress the importance of working within a team with different practice professionals. If I use the hockey analogy, now that we're going into the what's the tournaments coming up now?
Oh, the Four Nations Cup.
Four Nations Cup, right? You can't win the Four Nations Cup or the Stanley Cup if you put six goalies on the ice for one team, or six defensemen, or six forwards.
Mhm.
You have to have the three forwards, and even the forwards break down. You have to have a centerman, you have to have your wingers, you have to have a grinder, a shooter, a passer. On the defense, the same thing. You have to have all these pieces, and that kind of then goes out to the coaching and the trainers and whatever else. If you think about it, you're not dealing when you're dealing with us, you're dealing with different professionals that make up that team, and that's how you're going to reach ultimate success.
Mhm.
So I don't know, Ryan, if you have any final thoughts in concluding our session today.
No, I have nothing else. So surprisingly, I have nothing else.
Okay, so just really what we're trying to say is, if you're working with someone and you're getting the sense that the recommendation isn't really in your best interest, just get a second opinion, even get a third opinion. There's nothing wrong with that. We've had clients do the same thing where we've said to them, if you want to get another opinion, we're fine with that. Um, we've had clients in the past interview different advisors before ultimately landing or deciding to work with us. And many times, the reason why they've said that they've chosen to work with us is because we have this team of professionals that work together on behalf of a client. So look us up, tvhgroup.ca, tvhfinancial.ca. Take a look at our team, the different offerings that we have. If you have any questions, reach out to us. You can email us financial at tvhgroup.ca, call us 647 727 4668. And as always, if you like what you've heard or what you have seen, we encourage you to share, like, we're not for everyone, right, Ryan? I mean, we don't fit with everyone's personalities or what they're looking for, but we do fit with a lot of people, right? So if you feel that there's a fit, reach out to us.
Mhm.
All right. Well, Ryan, thanks again, and we may or may have another episode next week. It's Family Day, not sure, but if so, then I guess we're going to record what I thought we were recording today next week.
It'll be a surprise.
All righty,
All right.
everyone, take care.
Here.
All righty. Oh, my nose is so itchy.